Welcome everyone to the House of Shadows and Ink. My guest today is Mike Flanagan. If you're not familiar with Jamie, you're in for a treat. Just tell us a bit who you are, what you do, and welcome, of course.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, so I'm Mike Flanagan. I tend to write for television and scary shows such as Haunting of Bly Manor, Midnight Mass, Midnight Club, Fall the House of Usher, Hysteria, Creep Show, that sort of thing. Beyond that, I also write short stories and am supposed to be writing a novel and am avoiding that deadline with every fiber of my being. I've also decided to tackle anthology editing this year for the first time, which is daunting. So yeah, I'm very lucky right now that I'm someone who gets to do this for a living, and try to be grateful for that every day.
Excellent. Well, I mean, just the list of names you gave, I probably don't even have to ask. Like, this is your full-time job, being an author and creator.
Yeah, at the moment, this is my full-time job. That hasn't been true for most of my life. I went to school for theater, and then between age 20 and age 30, I pretty much waited tables, tended bars, taught adjunct. I sold Vector Cutco knives, if you ever got caught up in that pyramid scheme. What else did I do? I went back to school in my 30s to shift out of theater because I wasn't making a living and I couldn't pay my rent. I went back to community college and started taking prerequisites for something in medical. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I knew I didn't have the money to go be a doctor or even a PA. That was too much school, too much time, too much commitment, and too much cash. So it would be a tech job. And while I was doing those prerequisites, I started taking a creative writing course just to stay sane. And that was when I started writing short stories. And off of those, around the same time, when I got out of that, I finally graduated, I ended up being an ultrasound technologist for cardiac ultrasound. And I did that in a community hospital for about 6 years. Towards the end of that stint, my brother, who had been off in Los Angeles editing reality television and anything he could get his hands on to make his ends meet, had finally started to find some footing with an independent film that we did called Absentia, which we shot out of his apartment with our friends. And our Rustin Cerveny, our brother-in-law, was our director of photography. The star was Courtney, Mike's girlfriend, who was pregnant at the time with his son Rigby, and our friend Katie Parker. And Absentia was originally meant to be a collection of scenes for the actors' reels that Mike ended up scrapping that idea and just writing a full feature that we shot for nothing, that we kickstarted, to raise money for. And then we shot it in his apartment and in the tunnel adjacent to his apartment.
Cool.
Which was wild. And that started to find some footing. And that got Mike through the door with Oculus. And after he made Oculus, my sound's getting a little crazy here.
Don't worry, if the video quality looks a bit off, it's saving the high resolution stuff for the final product. So,
got it. No, it's the sound issue on my end. Absentia got Mike's foot through the door so that he could make Oculus. Oculus, then kind of kicked open the door at Netflix, and you get Haunting of Hill House, and then so on and so on and so on. Somewhere after Hill House had come out, I was reaching the end of my rope, working in the community hospital. I was working, 410s basically, which meant, crack of dawn, 4 a.m. to 4 p.m. kind of shift. A bit of a break there in between. And I was just getting burnt out on it. And so I started writing screenplays in my spare time between patients and after work. And I would send those to my brother and his producing partner until they finally relented and let me into a writer's room. And then I stuck around ever since. So, a bit of luck, a whole lot of, in my case, of kind of a privileged nepotism that is a hard thing to come by, but I lucked into it honestly by being, someone who had worked with this person before they found success. And it's been a real joy, and it's been completely life-changing. Ever since Bly Manor, this has been the only thing that I do. But again, that didn't strike for me until 39 or 40 years old.
It's been quite the journey. Well,
it has.
I've always been a firm believer that everything that happens before that actual process, the writing and all that stuff starts, has been in preparation of. So I'm sure everything that you've done and gone through, everything it's part of who you are, and it's gonna showcase in your work. So, and to a benefit of your work. And I mean, for those who haven't read your short stories yet, I've had the privilege. I think I've read like 3 short stories of yours. No, 2,
wow.
and then the reading that you guys did at Horror on Main, which was amazing. So now, like, if I can find anything with your name on it, I'm just going to grab it because I know it's going to be worthwhile. So it's not just like, yes, there's a lot of luck. I mean, that goes into a lot of things, myself included. Who you know plays a big role, but networking is hard. So we do need a lot of luck. It takes a long time to get to know like all the right people. I mean, even your brother's journey couldn't have been easy. So no, that's wonderful. And I'm sure it's going to just like keep going. I've always felt like, man, I had to be in my 40s before I got to what I'm really enjoying. And I'm like, man, I hope I have enough time left to get everything done, kind of thing. I think we just have to be grateful that we're finally here, kind of thing. So that's why I say to authors, whoever, doesn't matter what age you are, just go for it. Like, you might live to be 90, so lots of time left.
I agree. I think, it's kind of funny. The most recent anthology that I'm a part of is by Tom Deedy. He edited It's the Rack 2. And the story in there called Bistritz is actually the story that I had been writing in my creative writing class while I was bored out of my mind trying to avoid studying anatomy and physiology. And the spark of that story was just a word that came up in that A&P class. Hematopoiesis, blood making, which also, depending on Latin or Greek translation, is either blood making or blood poetry. And that sort of dichotomy there really inspired me. So I wrote this short little Jack the Ripper piece about it. And then, lo and behold, some 15 years later, I finally got it published. Man, I did submit that to journals and just got roundly rejected for many, many years on that one. It's also just... Yeah, it's interesting to see the stories that you were working on way back in the day that finally find a chance to shine. And I would encourage people to just realize that if you're one of those people that this happens to overnight, that's incredible. I certainly wasn't. I think that, as you said, everything you do that leads up to a moment where you're able to do this for the majority of your time, or even something that you can do for split time. Say you only have to work part-time teaching, but you can still, write, and the two of those will support you. That to me is a huge success. Like, that was a goal with theater that I never met, was that I wanted to be able to have a supporting gig during the day that could let me still do equity theater. The problem is equity theater rehearsed during the day, and most of the jobs that I found were either things that, were 9 to 5s, which would clash with a rehearsal schedule, or, things that would demand a sort of a lack of flexibility, so that you couldn't be like, okay, the rehearsals are done. Now it's nighttime shows. My wonderful job. Can you now release me for nights for while the show runs? And I couldn't find a place that would do that other than waiting gigs, and, a waiting job and an equity show every 3 months is not going to be enough to, rent an apartment in DC or New York or Los Angeles or Alaska or any of the number of places I lived and traveled to during that time. And I was working at some decent places. I was working at New York Theater Workshop for a little while there, like right out of college. And I went to school over in like Towson University in Baltimore. So I didn't go the conservatory route. I went arts, and I have a bachelor's of science in theater, which is the most bullshit degree I've ever heard of. It's a BS in theater. It's perfect. Since then, Towson, which back then was a state school, has, taken off the state part and become its own thing. They have now like a Bachelor of Fine Arts program and a graduate program for theater and all these wonderful things. Back when I was there, it was a state school with either a Bachelor of Arts or a Bachelor of Science. And the difference between the two was taking an extra year of foreign language. If I had taken one more year of French, I would have been an artist, but instead I was a scientist of art, which made no sense.
Okay.
But I don't know. Tangential, weirdest ways that we get to where we get.
Definitely. I struggled through 12, 13 years of teaching primary school while starting Crystal Lake Publishing as like this like sideline thing that I was hoping and praying would become a full-time gig. And I kind of knew it would. I saw the what's the word? Prospect that it's going to work. I just had to like put in the time. So it was like, day job, then sports, then we were living in the hostel, because then you live for free, basically. You eat for free, and then it's on to the writing and editing and then publishing and so on. But those last 2 years were that's where all my hair went, I'm sure. So like that last 2 years. But enjoy it while you have it.
I lost it for a minute. It's this hair is brought to you by estradiol and spironolactone and HRT. So, but for a minute there, I was quite bald.
Okay.
So yeah, no, I feel you. My brother also lost all of his hair to the struggle, so I think he could relate to you, Joe. Yeah.
I was, what's the word? It's like a blessing and a curse kind of thing. It's in the family genes. I was gray I was already turning gray in high school, and I was bald by like 28 and completely gray. No, I still had some hair, but I should have shaved it off earlier. Like, because it was starting to look like almost like a comb over kind of thing. Like, you don't want that. So yes, it's in the genes, but the blessing part is I also got like this sense of business and like just how it works from my father. It comes very natural to us, and I was able to combine the art and creativity with the business side, which is like the perfect combination.
Wow.
And I think these days, especially for all artists, I mean, it's a business. Being a writer, it's a full-time business. You have to look at your brand and, like we said, not just marketing, but networking and all that stuff. Like, you have to treat it like, I mean, you are the product kind of thing, and you spawn all these little product babies. So yeah, let's go way back. So because I mean,
Sure.
you said you did do like a creative writing workshop or course, so the interest was there. I mean, this is not just like I'm gonna try this, whatever. Like way back, were you an avid reader, comic books, a movie watcher? How did it all begin? And especially like this why the more scarier stuff, or even in acting, like how did that all begin?
Yeah, I think just Mike, my brother, had always had an interest in filmmaking. When we were kiddos, like really young, like 10 and 13, I remember he made a remake of The Untouchables.
Oh, nice.
In like, what was it, De Palma, I guess? Like he did a remake of The Untouchables. And we shot that in our house and in our yard with our friends. And like, it was a bunch of 10 and 13-year-olds running around with fake guns and fedora hats. Yeah, it was one of the earliest projects I remember. When Mike went to high school, he went into theater, and I was a typical younger sibling, so I followed him and in his footsteps and did the same thing, and then got into theater and kind of realized that I really loved it. There was a collaborative element to it and a storytelling element, and it also, I think there was a safety in assuming roles. And I grew up in a Irish Catholic military household and went to a Catholic school. I am gender queer and agnostic. So I was always looking for, even subconsciously before I had a lot of that knowledge about myself, I was looking for safe places to exist because I could, feel pretty distinctly that something was wrong in my life and in my environment. And books and theater and film were safe havens where you could pretend to be something else. And, in theater, you could actually step into a role and perform to the expectations of the director and of the audience, and then get applauded for it, which is good and bad. It's good because it gives you a sense of self. It's bad because it gives you a sense of self that is dependent and reliant on approval. So, it is both a comforting mask, but also a very damaging one, depending on who you are and why you're there. And I was there for the wrong reasons, which I think a lot of queer folks sometimes are in those spaces, especially if they're closeted or don't even really know what they are yet. With scary books and stuff, Mike was always a big King fan, and anything he liked, he'd pass down to me and I would read. I think like 4 Past Midnight, Skeleton Crew, and, a lot of the short story works that King did.
Short stories are amazing. Skeleton Crew, yes.
I mean, you look at something like The Jaunt, and The Jaunt just has just that drop kick of an ending. It's like the kid said something, but the father couldn't hear him because he was screaming louder, like stuff like that, where it's just an absolute gut punch of a thing. And then I remember, just the natural pipeline of reading a Stephen King book and then seeing the film or the miniseries, if it was It or what have you, Bag of Bones. I remember reading Dreamcatcher and loving it, and then going to the cinema to see Dreamcatcher and hating every moment of that experience. I try not to talk crap, but oh my God, Dreamcatcher really did not hit for me.
No, not at all.
And yeah, that idea of adaptation and that idea of taking things that we escaped into and loved reading and putting them on screen was kind of baked into our childhood. Yeah, then I found that in theater too, right? Like you would find things that were adaptations of old books that ended up on stage, or I don't think I ever did anything that actually made it from the screen to the stage, but I would occasionally do things on stage that then went on to be adapted for the screen, completely without my involvement, but it would be neat to see that happen. And I really got it in my head that, when it came to writing, whether it was a play or a film, it was mostly execution dependent. You can have a Shakespeare play that's absolutely brilliant, like Troilus and Cressida, and you can see a terrible production of it. And no amount of good writing is going to save a bad production of Troilus and Cressida. That said, if you see one where the actors know what they're doing and the director's on point, it can be a transcendent experience. And that's when I started to sort of look at writing and short stories and all the rest is more of blueprints for execution as opposed to just standalones themselves, which is a bit of a disservice to what they are because we escape into them and they're perfect in their own right. But there's always a part of me that's like, how would this feel to perform? And, what would be the best shape of this on a stage or in front of a camera? And that to me has always been really exciting. The idea that we take these stories and we do them again and again and again and over and over and over again. We fail with them or we succeed in them and we put new faces in them. And every now and again, one particular production of it will just shine, just an absolute beacon of how this was meant to be done. And that to me speaks to this unified human experience where one writer wrote something that was true to them. And then a bunch of artists come in and they interpret it and find even more truth in it subtextually. And they put that out in front of an audience who then looks at that, projects themselves onto it, and finds even more truth. And then you get this beautiful communal experience out of what was originally just an itch in one author's mind. That to me is like transcendent and wonderful. And while I do love writing in the short story space, the most wonderful thing I've had happen to me were two instances of people taking short stories that I wrote in and doing like podcast productions with them, with a cast.
Cool.
Shadows at the Door. I did a production of Bruiser with a wonderful cast. And then No Sleep Podcast took my all-time favorite piece of my own work, Moira, and, did a one-woman show out of that. And they floored me. Like, it was so wonderful and uplifting to see those pieces of work taken and enriched through the lens of other people's experience. And that's what I'm really here for more than anything else. It isn't to write the thing and get a high five for it. It's to write the thing and then to see somebody else take it and make it even better than it ever was. That happens with television all the time because once you're out of the writer's room, that script goes on to the director, to the DP, to the gaffers, to set deck, costumes, and then, of course, the actors who just take what you wrote and then put a scaffolding of subtext underneath it that makes it shine more than you ever could have imagined. I mean, there's writing a homily for a priest, and then there's hearing Hamish Linklater deliver it.
Oh, nice. Yes.
And Hamish took those and absolutely painted the fucking Sistine Chapel with them. Like, I don't know how he did it, but he made it better than I ever thought it would be when I was helping write it for the page. So I think that at its best, storytelling should be a collaborative and unifying community process. I'm a big fan of community theater. I know it gets a bad rap, but I think it's one of the purest forms of people of all walks of life coming together and sharing their experience together. And the outcome can sometimes be a little, uneven, but I don't think that's anything to be ashamed of. I think that most art is uneven, and that's okay. And that should be encouraged because every now and again, you get something that's off in just the right way. It ends up sort of...
And you can't replicate it. It's like, it's just that magic moment. And it works. That's awesome.
That was a very long answer to a very short question.
No.
So please jump in.
That's perfect. Like, if I can ask a short question and get like a long answer, my job's done. Like, because I mean, we're here to hear about you. So yes, I read it in a book somewhere. It's called Self-Story, your journey up to that point and everything you bring with it, every movie you've watched, every story you've read. And every actor, every director, every producer, every writer working on it, they all bring their self-story into this project. I mean, and then they create something new, let's say a movie, and then a new audience watches it, like a bunch of young people who are inspired, and then they become artists and writers, and then they go on to create amazing things. And so it just build on that. And I mean, that's why I'm also a fan of, like kids reading and imagination and all that stuff, because and especially if you can put in those messages and just, being a good person, that kind of stuff. I mean, I still remember when we were young, every episode of a kid show had a lesson to it. I mean, some of them, Braveheart, they actually told you what the lesson was. Like, hey kids, today we learn about whatever. And I mean, that didn't bother me as a kid. Like, oh, not again, that kind of thing. So yes, and it just, fingers crossed, makes the world a better place kind of thing, especially through creativity, because I think a lot of people lose that sense of wonder. I was watching that Walt Disney documentary where when he passed away, they said every adult should still have a bunch of kid in them, like 60% or 40%, I don't know what, like always have that element of just being a young kid with unlimited imagination. And I mean, I love that part of my job, at least. So have you ever thought of, well, I'm sure you, with the drama and stuff, whoever, like, you guys write a movie, a series, whatever, like you then take the rights and you write the play, or is there just not enough time? I mean,
Wow. Yeah. I mean, adapting something into a play, that is a hell of an undertaking. You're looking at workshops, you're looking at all sorts of different things. And also, yeah, I think as someone who spent as long as I did in the theater, there's part of me that still sort of fears a bit the idea of going back to it. It was formative for me and I wouldn't trade it. And I spent most of age 18 to probably about 30, late 30s doing it. And yeah, I went a little mad during lose hope. You get it back. I keep saying and yeah, I hung a lot of my sense of self on that. So for me, I don't really feel an urge to revisit theater or to become a playwright. I enjoyed working on the collaborative processes that I did and contributing to the writing during that time. Now that I'm working in short stories, novels, film, and television, I'm more than content here, which is not to say that I would say no if someone came up to me and said, hey, do you want to work on something with a local theater, or, do you want to develop this into a play? But it would need to be someone taking the reins and inviting me into that process. It isn't something that I would seek out on my own, having chased that dream for like 20 years and, banged my head against that wall for so long. And I wasn't, an amazing actor and wasn't an amazing theater maker, but I was very lucky to work with very, very good people. So my experience there was always, it was a space in which I needed to be invited from the first go round. You can audition for something, but it was never on you to, as an actor, to kind of take an impetus and come to a production house and be like, this is what I want to do. It was always, what are you doing? And can I throw my hat in the ring? That's what I'm used to in theater. Any other process would be alien to me, which is weird to admit, but very true. I would not know how to respond to being invited to sort of take the reins on an adaptation for something like that. So I'd have to know like the artistic director or something. Yeah, it's interesting to see people who kind of come out of theater and then move on to these other spaces. Way back in the day, I think it was like mid-20s, I was working at Studio Theater in DC. And at the time, I was working on a play called The Intelligent Design of Jenny Chow. And this was written by Rollin Jones. And Rollin ended up, at the time, we were just two people out of our respective colleges. I think he was out of conservatory and I was out of, again, a state school and just like grinding away. And yeah, we did Jenny Chow and it was this, really, really fun and emotionally moving show. At the time, I think it was described as an instant message with excitable music because it was in like the AOL era, and so cutting edge at the time. And now it's very dated and it's almost a period piece. And it's about identity and all sorts of things. But Rollin went on to showrun Interview with the Vampire, which is one of the absolute best things on television. I say Rollin like I'm on a first name basis with him. I haven't talked to Rollin Jones since we did that show. Like he probably doesn't know me from Adam, but I look at that. And then and when I was working on Hysteria, this actor who I had done my first professional show out of college with, Columbinus. This is a show about the Columbine shootings. In the New York Theater Workshop run, I was in a cast of that with Anna Camp. And Anna went on to do like the Pitch Perfect series and all that kind of stuff and became like a big Hollywood star. And then when I was working on Hysteria, which I wrote for, they invited me to play a priest in that. And I got to do a scene with Anna Camp. And it was this weird circular, it took 20 years for us to go from starving artists like, dying in New York City to actually being on a set where Anna's pretty close to the top of the call sheet. And I was a writer who had lucked into a small role that I got to share with her. It's just the strangest and most gratifying thing to see people who you have seen tough it out and struggle it out in theater sort of transcend the boards and find something new. Anthony Hopkins talks about how film essentially saved his life from being an actor on the boards forever. So I think that, yes, while I have a reverence for theater, while I love theater, while I definitely enjoy going to see it, it's almost like post-traumatic stress syndrome to imagine going back. It's a very daunting place.
I've seen a lot of actors leave the stage for Hollywood, and like in their 70s, they go back. So, I mean, the option is always there. You don't have to. Times are going to change. We'll see how things look in like the next 30 years. Who knows? I'm a big fan of like what I call exposure therapy type things. So, like you say, if you can do a bit of acting here and there, and a bit of writing, and then screenwriting, and then adapting, and then writing something with someone, and like short stories and novels, and every experience just like it becomes a part of you. You take it with you, and it's going to keep shaping you. I mean, the person you are today in 10 years is going to be completely different, stronger, more experienced, all of that stuff. So it's a lot to look forward to. Who knows what's next? What is next? Because I remember when we met earlier this year, you guys said you have something in November, I think in Canada, like a shoot or something.
Yeah. So that's Carrie, Stephen King's Carrie, which the writer's room for that's been done. But Mike and everyone involved in production, they've already wrapped production. They've finished filming. But that was recently, and they're done with that. So give them a year in post to get the episodes ready, and then that'll release on Amazon, hopefully within like a year or so. But very excited about it. It was a real joy to get to work on Carrie, especially contemporary adaptation of it. I've always looked at Carrie as one of the first stories of, and I know I'm sure this wasn't the intention at the time that it was written, because it wasn't as much of a ubiquitous problem, but I've always looked at Carrie in hindsight as like a prescient story about cruelty and in our school systems amongst children, and the lash outs that would eventually grow into things like mass shootings. And it's hard for me to look at that story in any other way, especially because, as I mentioned before, I worked on a show about the Columbine shootings for about 3 years at multiple venues. So this one for me, especially because I still see a lot of bullying in the world amongst children and adults, and the impetus for it really hasn't changed so much. The malcontent that will drive people to sort of torture other people, especially ones they barely know, it's still very prevalent. You only have to look at, say, Trump's treatment of immigrants or the right's view of LGBTQ plus people, and you still see that same thing. Or you just look at children in a playground. It's the same stuff. It's just wearing different clothes. So yeah, I think that Carrie is a timeless story. I really love that we got to explore what that would be today. And I hope that it rings true for audiences as it does for us. And I hope that it does, it does right by King. Again, coming from a theater background, we take these stories and we do them over and over and over again. This is just one more interpretation of a story that's been adapted multiple times, which was true of Bly Manor, which is true of The Fall of the House of Usher, which is true of The Haunting of Hill House. All of these things are stories that have been told by many different people in many different ways. And we're just tackling it again and looking for something that rings true for us, and hopefully will ring true for other people. So yeah, that was a real privilege to work on. I'm working on this anthology right now called Views from the Overlook, which is stories set in the Overlook Hotel between 1907 and 1970, leading up to the arrival of the Torrance family. And that's been a labor of love based on our work with Dr. Sleep, which I was privileged to be a part of. And, just having grown up reading The Shining and before the play and after the play, and really loving that property, that story, and wanting to tell new stories in that world. I think there's such a rich history with it, which Before the Play really dives into. And there's so many opportunities to look at things like, who and how the topiary animals were shaped. And what happened in that 2-year block when the Overlook Hotel was between owners. It was dilapidated and it was used as a writer's retreat. Like, this is canon stuff right out of, was it the scrapbook chapter of The Shining, that are just one sentence apiece, or even that Marilyn Monroe and Arthur Miller stayed there. Like, there's such a rich chance here to write beautiful stories and frightening stories in the hotel that fit with the lore. And that to me has been a real joy. I have never had an opportunity to sort of shepherd a project like this. Normally, this is something that I would very much be a contributor for. I, took my cues here from Brian Keene and Christopher Golden, who did such a beautiful job with the End of the World as We Know It, the Stand anthology. And they did something really lovely, which is that neither of them contributed a story to that anthology, which I thought was, as caretakers of the stories that they're working with, which is it's hallowed ground. I also did the same thing, which is I'm not contributing a story to this. I just wanted to edit it and find a vision and work with really, really inspired authors who love The Shining and who wanted to tell stories in that space. You can come in with intentions like that and still get the absolute shit kicked out of you by people online. And man, did I. So it's been an educational experience, but the one thing I've realized is you're never going to make everybody happy. The worst part about editing an anthology are the voices that you don't have room to include. I have 33 contributors, and, with the amount of people who probably love The Shining, it's like 0.000000001% of the writers who would have loved to have done this and who would have done a fantastic job are included. And that is awful, but it's reality and it's what we can do. So yeah, it's been really exciting this year to work on both Carrie and The Shining. And I hope that these stories find their readers and that the people who approach it with open hearts find the truth that they're looking for in it and the scares that they're looking for in it and the homages that they're looking for in it. I certainly am in this process, and it's been really wonderful. So yeah, it's been a wild year.
No, I'm so happy, like all of these, even the bad stuff, like it, we just grow out of it and learn. The one thing I can say, like all the shows you mentioned, and even like if I look at your body of work, like the writing that I've read, and I mean, I've seen a lot of the originals and I've seen, the Carries, and I mean, even then they were remakes. I mean, I've been watching, Alfred Hitchcock, 50s movies, all that stuff. And I have to say, the one thing that your brother, and like your writing room has done is, yes, these have always been good stories, but they're so focused like on the people, characters. And I mean, every person has this rich world around them that you don't see in a lot of the originals. I mean, you see people from different walks of life, whatever, coming together and how they interact, but you don't really know the characters that well, where in everything you guys are doing. So I'm very interested in seeing what happens with Carrie, because I think it's going to be an even deeper dive into this, like the psyche of people, even like maybe the bullies, the bad people. We'll have to wait and see. So,
well, there's a telling line, right? And that's, Sue Snell's "We Were All Just Kids." And that's, I think, a mantra in the writing room when talking about any of these characters, including Chris Hargensen, was "We were all just kids." So it's, I think that you're right on the money with taking a deep dive even into the people who perpetrate bullying and making sure that we humanize everybody in this piece.
With we've got our YouTube Kids show, the Eddie Poe show, where we did an article now for a newspaper about bullying and stuff with kids. And like a lot of it is, we want kids to read because that's where you learn empathy. Like you can't read if you can't put yourself in someone else's shoes and like experience life from them, like their point of view. And if we can get people to open up that part of like their mind, their art, whatever, make those connections, because I mean, I've no idea, I've never understood bullies, but it kind of feels like they don't realize what they're doing. You are going to get those people who like enjoy making others suffer, but I think some of them just think it's funny because they're like so self-centered that they just believe, oh, it's making me laugh, so it's got to be good, kind of thing. So those are the topics we want to try and bring up and maybe educate them in a way. But I mean, there's still some adults who they just don't get it.
Yeah, I think for bullying, I don't think there's a one size fits all. I think there's an array of reasons that people will lash out at other people. These can be insecurities, they can be family, traditional prejudices that are passed down. They can be just a fear of the unknown, fear of something that is different, which you hear that one a lot and it's echoed. And, for a moment, it almost sounds cliche. And then you remind yourself it feels cliche because more often than not, it's true. Yeah, I think there's this wider range for why people are kind to each other as for why people are cruel. And trying to understand that is one thing. Unfortunately, I wish I could tell you that at the end of this season of Carrie, we'll present you with a wonderful solution to this problem, but we won't, because I don't think that there is an easy solution to this problem other than what I think you're pointing to, which is empathy and investing into the stories of other people and being able to accept that, just having the imagination and skill set to read a work by an author who doesn't look like you or sound like you and step into the shoes of the protagonist who doesn't, I think that there's something to that. And if you pick up a story and it's like, wow, this is a protagonist who doesn't look or sound like me, I don't want to read this story. I think you're doing yourself a horrible disservice. I think that those are exactly the kind of stories you should be reading, because those are the ones that, as you mentioned, broaden empathy and understanding of the world around you beyond your own skin. So yeah, hopefully I'm hoping that the show leans in the direction of inviting more people to consider more diverse life experiences, and how it will be received, as with anything, is entirely beyond our control and not something at the end of the day that I can really care about. You just have to love the work that you're doing, trust the work that you're doing, trust the intention behind the work, and trust that it'll find its people. And maybe if you're extremely lucky, it will find someone who maybe didn't think that way before, that it might nudge them in a certain direction. But there's no guarantee on that. And but it's the hope.
Oh, yes. I'm sure just for the people that it will connect with and touch, it's already going to be worth it, because that's what art does. I mean, if a painting can make someone cry, just imagine what you can do with a movie and all the characters, or a book with internal thoughts. Because I think as humans, we tend to think like, I'm the only one going through this. No one understands, struggling. Like, no one's mind can be this cluttered and busy and crazy. And then until you read a book or whatever, you can hear people's thoughts, and you're like, man, this sounds a lot like me, kind of thing. And you realize everyone's just struggling and arguing with themselves and maybe putting on a show. And especially, like we talked about the bullies and stuff. I mean, who knows what kind of like examples were set for them. I mean, like you said now with Trump and stuff, I mean, a lot of young people are seeing this, and hopefully they're not going to think this is how you normally treat people. So who knows what's going to happen over the next 50, 60 years. We can only hope for the best and do what we can from our end. Someone actually said in a workshop last weekend, which really rings with me, is you can't solve these problems, but you can push back. Like, we just, keep fighting. It's not our responsibility to solve anything or like solve bullying forever, but just keep pushing back and maybe help someone somewhere. That's all we can do.
I think that's on point. Life's a struggle. And I think that, with this stuff, it is an eternal struggle. It's opposites. And it's, if we aren't pushing back, then we're just letting something far worse trample a whole bunch of people. So it's kind of incumbent on us to push back. Yeah.
So what are you all working on now, or like top secret in between projects?
Yeah, well, I know Mike is, and this is not top secret at all. It's in the trades. Mike's off to work on The Exorcist, his adaptation of The Exorcist. Yes. I'm not involved with that. That's his feature stuff. And if I'm lucky, I'll sneak onto set, lean on a lamppost for a shot, and we'll call it a day. But yeah, for me, I'm working on a novel. That's been a struggle, because I struggle with self-confidence with long-form prose. It's just not something I'm used to. A screenplay for me is a blueprint, and it's much simpler to put down. I'm not worried about tone or flow, especially with looking at some things like scene description. I'm not worried about a character's inner life, because I understand the inner life as I'm writing the dialogue and trust an actor and director. With a novel, it seems like, from a really good novel has a beautiful dance between inner life, between exterior, and then, of course, between dialogue. And then you have to worry about, okay, which tense am I using? Which character POV am I coming at this through? Is it the right one? Is it effective? And those kind of questions, my hat is off to all of the amazing and wonderful novelists out there and novella writers who do this and live and breathe it, because I find it to be an extremely Sisyphusian task of rolling a boulder uphill that keeps rolling back down across me, and then I roll it back up again. But I'm about 100.
It's so different from short story writing. Like, it's not the same at all.
It is night and day, and short story writing with prose is definitely what I would consider to be a stronger suit of mine. It's where I feel more comfortable. And that isn't to say the end result is more gratifying to an audience. I will never make that claim, but it's easier for me to write. With a novel, I tend to just err on the side of less is more, and end up handing people things that, you get the review back and it's like, oh, this feels too exterior. And I'm like, well, screenwriter, I write from the from the vantage point of 6 feet away with a camera. It's like, I don't know how to get out of that. So that's a challenge for me, and I'm doing my best, but it remains a challenge. I'm about 125 pages into novel number 1 and about 60 pages through novel number 2. I keep jumping back and forth between them, because I keep running into that moment of just complete self-doubt, abandonment of come back and then I think it's great and then reread it and think it's terrible. All the things that imposter syndrome does in pretty much
Oh,
any
yes.
profession, which, by the way, if you have imposter syndrome, it's okay. It's part of it, and it never
Perfectly
goes away, at
normal.
least for me. Some people don't have it, from what I understand. There's at least one author who I effing adore, and, I just think is an incredible novelist, Daniel Kraus, who apparently can just
Oh, yes.
doesn't have that block. Number one, I'm incredibly grateful that Daniel Kraus doesn't have that block, because I love reading Daniel Kraus. From Angel Down to Whalefall. I'm super excited that Daniel's working on the Overlook anthology, which is great, and crafting a story for that. But I always have self-doubt, and that came with me from the stage. People always, in talkbacks, there's always one person who asks, about how do you deal with stage fright, and I never had an answer for that other than you just do the thing. And and you either love it or hate it or doubt it or feel like you're great or feel like you're trash at any given moment, but you still just do it. So yeah, if you have that block, that's okay. You're in great company with so many other people.
I've actually been doing a lot of research on imposter syndrome. That's actually where the pushback thing came from. We were discussing that. And because a lot of authors, and I help a lot of authors in our workshops and stuff, and like 80% of them, the biggest block is mental. It's like they're the ones standing, like they're their own obstacle kind of thing. And it really comes down to, we think, like if you look at someone's career and you only see the best parts, you don't see the struggle, you just see the end products. It's like, man, they're so perfect. We look at, even our parents, like for how long did a lot of us believe our parents were perfect because they're trying to hide stuff from us, our favorite actors and everything. But they also had internal thoughts. I think there was a book that someone wrote about imposter syndrome, like even kings and queens go to the toilet or something like that. Famous people, whatever, they're all the same. There are various types of imposter syndrome or why we experience them, but the main thing is we think we're not as perfect as those people who don't have internal thoughts, which is not true at all. So yes, the answer is push back and just do it anyway. What I would suggest is it's almost with the exposure therapy type thing, incremental steps into like the growth zone. So just like slightly out of your comfort zone, but not too far. And so sometimes I would recommend to authors write a novella first. So from a short story, just go up to like 25, 30,000 words, edit that, just get to that comfort level of, okay, I did that, it's done. Because just that feeling alone, like I did that, I can do that, I can do it again. Let's add another 15,000 words kind of thing. In like 10 years, you're going to get to the novel and then it's going to feel as natural as can be kind of thing. So I think we all want to take the big jumps and then it's a bit overwhelming. Like, go for the big wave instead of learning first. Because short stories and novels are like, whoa.
Yeah, they're very, very different.
Well, a lot of novelists say like they've got all the respect in the world for short story writers because it takes longer. It's more of a craft.
Yeah, I guess it's a grass is always greener on the other side. I don't know. I just find short stories to be much more focused, knowing the beginning point and the end point and being able to sort of drive there with momentum, as opposed to sometimes in a novel, it feels like you're taking a more circuitous path. I won't say to fill a page count, but to make the story travel in unexpected directions so that by the time you get to your conclusion, it feels like it has been a long journey of discovery. Short stories, I feel like, are a knife through paper. It's just like, and you're just right there. And if you do it right, and if you land it right, it stabs someone in the heart. And that's a good short story, in my opinion.
Most short stories play off over like 2 or 3 days. A novel feels like it's been 2 or 3 years. And like you've been part of that character's journey, you've been there with them, or you were that character kind of thing. There is one more thing. Oh yes, that I did a novella writing workshop earlier this year. Whether you're a plotter or pantser, I always say at least still figuring it out.
Yep. Plotter, pantser, it depends, like with screenwriting, we outline everything. We outline every episode, every scene, every beat. With a short story, I could pants those. With a novel, like it both, depending. I plot until I can't, and then I pants until I find myself back on the rails of the plot. It's the weirdest thing.
There is a nice balance to look for. And that's why I always tell authors, you don't need to know the exact final scene. like, oh, this is going to happen and they're going to fight or whatever. But you need to know what that feeling is you want the reader to experience when they read that final page. Or like, what is the essence of your story? This, I think some people call it the spine of the book or whatever. It's like, for instance, family overcomes anything together, or working together is better than being alone. Like that kind of message. So if you know what you want the reader to experience at the end, you just always aim for that. It's going to help you with decision making later on. And you still have enough room to go in different directions and travel a bit and pants a bit, because if a novel is too structured, the exciting part's already over. Now you have to sit down and write, which can then be very boring because there's no room for exploring. So I'm like a fan of right in the middle, like between plotting and pantsing. You can do both. You need a little bit of structure and enough room to breathe and change
I would
whatever you
agree.
want to change. I think it's easier then to move forward and not feel so restricted. Because I mean, we've got wicked imaginations. Like your imagination shouldn't be restricted at all. Like that's why especially I like horror so much. It's like there's no natural law. Anything can happen. I mean, I've read some weird fiction, like weird horror that's like that blew my mind. Like I can't even think that far, which is amazing. But that's what appealed me to, the scarier stuff. I'm sure a lot of people, I read sci-fi as a youngster. That's probably why a lot of people enjoy sci-fi so much, because it's just, you don't experience that at a day-to-day basis here on Earth.
Yeah. I just, not just recently, but I recently spoke with Amal El Motar and about a project, but also about just how much of a fan I am of This Is How You Lose the Time War, which she co-wrote, and as a piece of science fiction and fantasy, because that one kind of, I guess it's more science fiction, but though it does have fantasy elements to it. That book blew me away. Like, it's a gorgeous love story, that fully fleshes out two worlds at war, and it's really cool. If you haven't read This Is How You Lose the Time War, I highly recommend it. It's great. You will have never read anything quite like it. It's wonderful.
I actually wanted to ask now, like any book recommendations, movie recommendations, especially like more recently, last 5
Like
years
more
kind of thing.
last 5 years. Oh, man. Yeah, I can highly recommend Angel Down by Daniel Kraus. I think that novel is exceptional. Also, Whalefall by Daniel Kraus, A Light Most Hateful by Haley Piper, The Shoemaker's Magician by Sina Paleo. Like, there's a pretty incredible wealth of work out there right now in just the writing space. In terms of like cinema in the last 5 years, Interview with the Vampire, that adaptation, the AMC adaptation, which you can now watch on Netflix, is just an absolute 10 out of 10 in terms of writing, production, performance, adaptation. It's the full package. In terms of a movie that I've seen recently that I would recommend, I really enjoyed One Battle After Another. P.T. Anderson stuff can be hit or miss. Yeah, One Battle After Another. It's pretty good. It's based on a novel, and at least I believe it is, that I have not read. But it's timely, it's well directed, it's propulsive. It's not a horror film by any means. It's not really a genre piece. It's more about struggle in American society and political and fanatical movements. It's great. I really, really enjoyed that one. I'm looking forward to seeing Osgood Perkins' Keeper, though I haven't seen it yet, but I love Tatiana Maslany, and the trailer just looked like an absolute banquet of horrific imagery. I really enjoyed Guillermo del Toro's adaptation of Frankenstein. I know that it seems like that's a love it or hate it project. Again, with adaptation, given how many times Frankenstein has been adapted, and given that there have been really, really tooth and nail faithful adaptations, like the Brana version is pretty faithful to the source material. I really love that Guillermo del Toro put his own stamp on this, and that he went a different route with it. I really loved the stage version with Benedict Cumberbatch and Johnny Lee Miller, where they alternated nights as the monster and the creator. And that was directed by Danny Boyle. You can see both of those. It was the National Theater. You can see both of those online. At the time, I think I had to torrent them, which is terrible. But I think now you can actually rent them. There's a gajillion adaptations of Frankenstein. And I think Del Toro did an absolutely beautifully human take on it, which
I really
has a
enjoyed
different...
it.
Yeah, the message is different than maybe Shelley's message, and definitely, the ending has a lot more hope to it than you expect from that story. But that didn't bother me whatsoever, because again, adaptation is about finding new truth and in time-tested material.
Even the brother coming in, that it felt like natural, like it's always
did.
been
He ended
there.
up being a great character, and I loved that, the love story between the brother and yeah, it wasn't really a love story between the brother
That
and Mia
line
Goth's
where
character.
you
Yeah,
see, what
she
did he
was
say?
trapped in that relationship as she wasn't anything else,
Yes.
but it was the one that it was like the cage she chose versus the other options. And, she saw in the creature a kindred spirit that she could have and should have been with in a kinder world. It's like that, I thought was really a beautiful message. And then you look at like how the brother was used in that stage adaptation in the Danny Boyle one. And the brother is like, he's like 6. And then that version, he's just a tiny little kiddo, and, very much dead by the time the monster gets out and does his thing. So it's, yeah, adaptation, folks. It's just like, if you're upset because it isn't, just locking into the source material, and like, what? It's an adaptation. Let it be an adaptation. The source material exists and perfectly. You can always enjoy that anytime. Why would you just want a reheated version?
I mean, times have drastically changed since it was written.
Yeah. Yeah. And so many of the themes still hold true, which is incredible. Like,
yes,
Mary Shelley knew what she was about.
And she was like, what, 18 years old, I think?
She was young. Yeah. And then, she was, of course, around, with, was it Percy Bysshe Shelley and like and Lord Byron. And it was so interesting to see the backlash of people who were against the Byron quote. And I'm like, they all used to hang out, right? Like this was, it was like Byron, Percy Shelley, Mary Shelley, and then like Dr. John Polidori. He used to freaking just hang the F out and talk about stuff. And, there's that, what was it? What are they in, like Switzerland or something? Yeah, I don't know. It was just really interesting to see people get angry about that and be like, well, if you dive into the history, that's actually extremely appropriate to put like a Byron quote there, as they were very much in a conversation with each other throughout their lives and throughout their work. So it just, yeah, I don't know. People get very, very passionate about things. And I don't know. I tend to try to take a much kinder approach to how I consume media, especially adaptations, and just realize that, people have different points to make. And Mary Shelley already made hers, and Guillermo del Toro wanted to make his, and, do honor to what she made while making his own point, which beautiful thing.
And back to that self-story thing. I mean, it could even be, let's say like someone's giving it a little bit of hate now. They're probably not at that point in their life yet where it does make sense for them. Like if they come back and watch that movie, like what is it, like it was a movie in like 20 years, they finally get it, because they're just not there yet. I mean, so if Del Toro made this movie 30 years ago, it would have been a completely different thing.
Absolutely, yeah. And yeah, there's no insisting that people like a thing, but I would say if you're going to dislike something, like anything in the world, if it's a piece of art and it isn't offensive, maybe dislike it kindly, whatever that means to you. Because the love that went into it and the passion that went into it are evident on that screen when you watch that movie. It is like
it is kind of good to know that people can still get that passionate about something, about like a creation, like art and fiction and whatever. I've only seen it in like, sports fans, but I've never personally, like, I enjoy stories. Like that's where my passion is. I don't even care what genre it is. I just lean more to the scarier, fantastical things. But I mean, a good story, Shawshank Redemption, Green Mile. I mean, that's not like, those aren't horror movies or books.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Man,
you don't get a whole lot of purists coming out and being like, well, in Rita Hayworth and the Shawshank Redemption, it didn't happen quite like that. Like nobody says that. And I'm just like, people are very selective as to what they take umbrage with, I think. And sometimes not entirely on the up and up. So I think it's,
My first experience with people judging stuff very harshly is when I realized Stephen King actually had haters and like 1-star reviews. I'm like, what? I couldn't understand it. And they like gave him hate and say, no, he'll never be a real author because he's not committed. He doesn't write enough. He's not hard. Like really? Like, I mean, how many words a day does that guy have to write to put out all the books that he's
honestly
done?
In order to call yourself a writer, I figure all you have to do is write a sentence and you're a writer. I mean, I don't gatekeeps the writing community.
No.
Yeah, it's, but yeah, with King, I do find it astounding that there are still people who come at him with those sorts of criticisms. He is self-admittedly called himself the burger and fries of the literary world, but the burger and fries can be awfully good if you're in the mood. I would be much kinder to King's work than that quote of his is to himself, because I think that he's written some incredibly nuanced character work over the years that has, again, proven to be indelible and often adapted because we find truth in it and want to sort of dive deeper into the things that he's created.
Yeah, and now I hear
he's created.
He's like the most banned author in America at the moment.
Is he? Wow.
It's 83 books or something.
Well, I mean, there's that one scene in it, and then I get
Yes.
that's gonna be one that's always gonna be like, well, if you're gonna ban something, it might be that. And that's a tough one to really get behind. That said, the man's body of work is pretty incredible, and the impact that it's had on generations of writers and stories being told, and horror writers of all walks, even screenwriters just inspired by King. It's we are legion. It's there's so many of us who embrace this world and who understand what the path of the beam is, who understand, I don't know, 19 Katet, just like anyone who's read The Dark Tower. I don't know how you can read that and the rest of King's work and then walk away and be like, this guy's a hack. You're like, no, this guy was working in like a Dickensian level of intertextuality that very few authors achieve. Like, that at the center of this is Roland Deschain and The Dark Tower. And and he created an entire universe with his career that we are still like gleefully indulging in today, whether it's Welcome to Derry or, another adaptation of It from the miniseries to the most recent, to The Stand or the multiple adaptations of Salem's Lot. Like, it's, like you actually get to like choose your flavor of Salem's Lot. There's even one that comes in Rob Lowe. Like, it just happened.
Oh yes.
And there it is. Like, it's wild. There's the mini series of The Langoliers, which to this day it has like Balky in it. It's like one of these wild things that you can just pick up and watch. And and then you can go read The Langoliers and it will still be creepy as F, even if that miniseries didn't quite strike the same tone. You get the miniseries The Tommyknockers. You get one of my favorites, Storm of the Century, which is not adapted from anything. I mean, that he wrote for television. Like, there's no source material on that. That is the thing itself, where he's like, I'm writing this for TV. And Storm of the Century is great. Colm Feore as Andre Lenoge is absolutely effing wonderful in that. Like, that was the first thing I think I'd really clocked Colm Feore in. And since then, I've seen him gone on to do like Julie Taymor's Titus Andronicus. He played like Marcus in that, I think. He played Hopkins' brother in that one. Then I saw him in like Chicago as like the prosecutor. And then like, he's a wonderful stage actor who busted into the film and television scene as the big bad in a Stephen King direct-to miniseries script. And I'm like, that's a beautiful, beautiful thing. So if anything, King's given us a wealth of gifts, including Colm fucking Feore. Like, if we're not grateful for that, I don't know what we're doing here. Then you get the multiple adaptations of The Shining from the Kubrick version, which is, just visually stunning and an incredible piece of tone that maybe shies away thematically from the things that we loved about the book. But then you get a lot of those things you loved about the book from Mick Garris's adaptation of The Shining, which was done for television, and Steven Weber turned in a fucking great performance as Jack Torrance with, in my opinion, more nuance than Nicholson, even though I love what Nicholson did. They're just different. And I think that there's room for things to be different and equally celebrated. That's my take on all of this. But
no, I agree.
Anyway, again, a long answer to a short question. If there even was a question, man, I think I just ranted. Sorry about it. I think I just went.
No, I love it. Well, so any last words, advice to authors, artists, screenwriters, actors, whatever out there?
Yeah. Just write the thing that makes you sad. At the end of the day, that is what I do. I sit around and I ruminate and I get sad and don't know how to handle that or process that. I write about that. And that's what I do. And I know that isn't what everybody does, but if you're looking for one way in, that is one way in. It's not right or wrong. It's just one. So if it doesn't work for you, find the one that does. If you'd rather be a reader and not write, that's okay too. At the end of the day, how we tell each other's stories is less important than just the stories that we're telling. And we do that in so many different media. And sometimes we do that just through the virtue of the life that we're living and how we interface and interact with the world. So you're already a storyteller, even if you've never put a pen to paper. You've been telling a story your whole life. And yeah, if it's something that you feel like you want to write about, don't let anybody tell you that you're not a writer. And don't let anybody tell you that there's a right or wrong way to do this. If you're inspired to do it, just go for it and put it out into the world. If you want to get something made into like a film, make it with the people that you love and make it something that you love and kickstart it with funds from any way that you can. If you want to be a success, I don't know how that happens. I don't have a perfect path to how that does. But I will say, if you're out there thinking to yourself, all I want to be is a success, or that you want to be an author more than you want to write, if that makes any sense, maybe reevaluate that and look for the thing you actually love doing as opposed to the status you want it to achieve. There are plenty of actors out there who want to be an actor more than they want to actually rehearse lines, work collaboratively, and get on stage and perform. And in my opinion, that's actually kind of a tragedy. And yeah, so I find the thing you actually want to do and do that. And if it's writing, the minute you put a pen to the paper and write 3 words and it feels to you like that is something true that you want to chase, congratulations, you're a writer. That's it. You've done it. And then from then on in, all you have to do is keep on keeping on, one word in front of the other, one brick on top of another until you realize the structure. And that structure could be as simple as, 5 bricks that are precariously balanced, or it could be an absolute cathedral. And sometimes you don't know until you're halfway into building it. Or sometimes, you leave a structure behind and then come back 15 years later and then add to it and add an addition. And then all of a sudden what you thought was a novella was actually a novel. So just don't judge yourself. If you want to write, read a bunch, live a bunch, fail, come back, and then write about it.
Excellent. No, I definitely agree that persistence, just keep at it and don't give up. But I think a lot of people also need to properly define what success means for them. What is your definition of success as an actor or as a writer or as whatever? Because there's so many different levels. And if you're only aiming at like the very top, you're probably never going to be happy.
Yeah. I think the
tricky.
worst criticism I could give somebody is to tell them that, you have what it takes to make it all the way to the top of any ladder, because the person who has that ability is a sociopath. It's for me, like right now, success is my Wednesday night D&D group with my group of friends who are, not writers and not actors and not filmmakers, who I've known for going on 15 years now and who I adore. Success is being able to hang out with my mother and get lunch and then maybe go to the Baltimore Museum of Art on occasion. And success is, being able to eat and have a roof over my head. And then the icing on the cake is like when I finish a short story then that feels like a great moment of success. Or when I'm able to invite collaborators to work on a project together. That to me feels like a wonderful moment of success when I'm like, we get to play together. That feels great. So I'm going to keep doing stuff like that. And if that keeps putting a roof over my head, great. And if not, I'll find another way. I did before. And I'll still write. I'll just also wait tables, 10 bar, teach adjunct, sell vector knives, do whatever else I have to do to survive so that I can actually live in the work. And that to me is, I guess, as close to success as I could hope. And I hope that everybody has that same level of satisfaction, which is you can eat, you can survive, and you still have enough gas in the tank to do what you're passionate about.
Oh, that is awesome. And I like what you said about like emotion, what makes you sad. I think it was Ben Farthing, I'm not 100% sure, who said he also likes to explore emotions or thoughts or something that he's thinking about, and he doesn't have an answer to it, but he's going to explore it and write about that. And he discovers as he writes. I just need to go and check where that is again. But it was also that emotion, like, why do we feel like this? The one was with the neighbors, but yeah, I do so many interviews and like workshops and stuff, and I always hear these gems that like I take on, but then I can't remember exactly who said it. Something I need to work on.
Hey, no, I think the great thing is that I'm sure that I'm bastardizing a quote from somebody else. Like there's nothing original under the sun. And yeah, at the end of the day, now that's part of your story, right? Like that bit of advice is now yours because it rings true to you. So next time you say it, you don't have to you don't have to attribute anybody. You can just be like, just say that, I, Joe, believe that you should write from a place of emotion from a question that you don't have an answer to. I think that's a beautiful thing. And that's yours now. Like, take it, run with it. It's great.
And that's why we need to like read and watch and like consume stories. You can't give back if you don't take in. I mean, what are you going to share if you never consume? So,
yeah.
Well, thank you, Jamie. This was awesome. Anything you wanted to add that we didn't cover?
Sure. Yeah. And hey, Joe, thank you for having me. This has been a real pleasure.
It's lots of fun.
Coming up soon to plug a Kickstarter from a group of people that I'm working with who are all lovely, that give me that sense of like, oh yeah, this is where I should be with lovely humans. Royal Puff and Company are putting together another exquisite corpse of a story, which is, when a bunch of different authors take over chapter by chapter the same story. This one's called
Nice.
Canaries. The Kickstarter is going to go live, I think, within the next couple of weeks if it hasn't already. Yeah, if you get a chance and you want to go support a lot of lovely writers, it's got like Judith Sonnet and like Amanda Headley and a bunch of others, and myself included. That should be a really fun one. And yeah, it's one where the money that goes into it is going to go back into Scares That Care, so it's for charity.
Cool.
So highly recommend it if you get a chance. Canaries, edited by Royal Puff. We're still in the writing process of that. I've finished my chapter. I think they're on like a contributor 10 or something by now and still rolling right along. But it should be a really good time for a good cause. So if people to come after that, it would be great to see.
Well, I'll get all the links and stuff from you. So anyone watching this now can just look in the description for links to everything we talked about. Lots of stuff to enjoy. And I'm sure I'm super excited about what the future holds. Like so many cool things that you and your writing group and together are going to do. And who knows what else comes along. I mean, the possibilities are really, really endless. And that's the great part. Yeah. Well, thank you so much, Jamie, for being on the House of Shadows and Ink. I'm sure everyone enjoyed it. And please let us know in the comments, ask questions. If there's anything specific for you, I will let you know because we want, that interaction. The world has never been in this spot where creators and fans can actually communicate so easily. And I think it's amazing because a lot of those fans are going to become writers and creators. And isn't it just wonderful?
Yeah, it's pretty fantastic. Yeah.
Well, thanks again. And when you have something big coming up again, let us know and we'll chat again. I'm sure there's going to be a lot. And
fingers crossed.
Thanks for coming on.
We'll see. Thanks, Joe.
Cheers.